What if everything you thought you knew about millionaires was just wrong? I mean, forget the private jets, the champagne, the designer brands. We're about to dive into the incredible research from the millionaire next door. And I promise you, we're going to uncover the surprising and frankly, the shockingly ordinary truths about who is actually wealthy in America, and more importantly, how they got there.
Can you believe that? That's what a trust officer said after meeting a focus group of 10 first-generation millionaires. His complete and utter shock, it just perfectly captures the central myth that we are about to completely dismantle. The people who are truly wealthy, they often hide in plain sight, and their secret isn't what they show off, but what they don't.
You know, the researchers who wrote the book, they learned this lesson the hard way. For their very first focus group with decamillionaires, they laid out this huge, fancy spread. Gourmet pâtés, vintage wines, the whole 9 yards. And guess what? The millionaires barely touched it. One of them famously said he only drinks scotch and 2 kinds of beer, Free and Budweiser. And that little story just perfectly illustrates this huge disconnect between our image of wealth and the quiet, frugal reality. So, if they aren't the characters we see in the movies, who are they, really? Let's peel back the curtain and take a look at the actual data, the real profile of the typical American millionaire. Get this, 80%. This single number just shatters one of the biggest myths about wealth, that you have to inherit it. Nope, the overwhelming majority, more than 80%, are self-made. They built their fortunes in a single generation. And what that means is that their playbook is something that can be learned, not just passed down.
So what does this person actually look like? Well, the research paints a really clear picture. They're typically in their late 50s, they're married, and they've probably lived in the same town for years. And about 2/3 of them are self-employed. But not in some flashy tech startup chasing venture capital. Think dull, normal businesses. We're talking welding contractors, pest controllers, people who pave roads. They found a niche, and they served it really, really well, without any of the glamour.
And what's the magic number? Well, while the average net worth gets skewed way up by billionaires, the median, which is the typical millionaire household, has a net worth of $1.6 million. Now, that is a serious amount of money for sure, but it's also an attainable figure, one that was built over decades of discipline, not by winning a lottery ticket or getting lucky on a stock pick.
And this brings us to probably the most crucial principle in the entire book. It's a complete reframing of what it even means to be wealthy, shifting the focus from earning to keeping. See, the book makes this critical distinction. Wealth is not the same as income. It's not. You could earn $1 million a year and have a net worth of 0 if you spend it all. True wealth is what you keep, what you invest, the assets that actually grow over time. It's a total mindset shift from looking rich to actually being rich. Okay, so the authors gave us this simple little rule of thumb to measure how well you're doing at this whole wealth accumulation thing. It's pretty cool. You multiply your age by your total annual pre-tax income, and then you just divide by 10. And that number, that gives you a benchmark for what your net worth should be at your stage of life.
Now, using that formula, you can figure out where you stand. Are you a PA, a prodigious accumulator of wealth with a net worth double what's expected, or are you a UAW, an under-accumulator of wealth with half or even less? The research is so clear on this. High-income UAWs are everywhere. Think doctors, lawyers, executives who spend so much on their lifestyle that they have less actual wealth than a frugal business owner earning a fraction of their salary. It's fascinating.
So take a second and just think about it. Where do you fall on that spectrum? The answer, you'll find, probably has a lot less to do with the size of your paycheck and way more to do with your habits. I love this next part. The book uses this fantastic Texan phrase to describe people who look wealthy but have nothing to back it up. Big hat, no cattle. So let's take a look at the spending habits of the people who have a whole lot of cattle but choose to wear a very, very small hat. We're coming back to this quote because it is just so perfect. See, it's not about being cheap, it's about being unpretentious. These people get their satisfaction from being financially independent, not from impressing their neighbors with their taste in wine. Their priorities are just different. And if you look at the hard data, the picture gets even clearer. The median price the typical millionaire ever spent on a suit was just under $400. For a pair of shoes, $140. For a watch, a measly $235.
I mean, just think about that for a second. Most of us would assume those numbers would be 10, maybe even 20 times higher.
And here is the absolute kicker. Spending a ton of money on status items, it isn't a sign of wealth. It's very often a barrier to it. This data shows that the people who aren't millionaires are actually far more likely to buy the expensive suits, the fancy cars, the flashy watches. They're playing the part, but they just don't have the balance sheet to back it up.
Okay, so if it's not about having a huge income or flashy spending, what is the blueprint? Well, the researchers identified 7 key characteristics, 7 common denominators that these wealth accumulators all share. And together they create a really clear roadmap to financial independence. So here they are, the 7 core factors. It all starts with the basics, living well below your means and being super efficient with your time and money. But then there's this crucial belief system. Financial freedom is just more important than displaying social status. And notice the family aspect here. They weren't given endless financial handouts, what the authors call economic outpatient care, which just creates dependency. Instead, they raised their own kids to be self-sufficient. So you take that financial discipline, combine it with a knack for spotting opportunities and choosing the right career, and that's it. That's the whole blueprint. You know, in the end, what the authors really discovered was that for these millionaires, the real reward wasn't the final number in their bank account. It was the pride and the deep satisfaction of the journey, the discipline, the goal setting, the sheer achievement of building something from nothing and securing their family's future. So we end with the big question, the one the book poses to every single reader. Now that you've seen the real blueprint, the trade-offs, the discipline, the focus on substance over style, are you willing to make those changes in your own life to achieve true financial independence? The path is a lot clearer than you might think.